I want to thank my new friend for a year now, Judy Burrell, because Judy Burrell came up to me, like many of you, with suggestions and said, have you ever heard of the Donut Dollies? And I had, no, never in my life had I heard of them. And she started explaining it and told me about this video that I had to watch on YouTube, which I did. And then her friend, who's a Donut Dolly. So my first thing was to go to the YouTube video, and I met on YouTube Libbie Hegvik, our speaker today. And she is very knowledgeable, and she'll explain more about why she's so knowledgeable about this. And then Judy started identifying people, and we have an actual Donut Dolly here today who's going to be our speaker next week, Mary Allen Berry. One of our speakers next week. So I have told so many people about this and secret. These two lectures, I think, are the ones I'm most excited about this year. So let's get started. Libbie Hegvik. The title today is the Donut Dollies. 627 women who also served in Vietnam. Libbie's mother was a Donut Dolly in Vietnam, and her father was a helicopter pilot. Over the years, she learned that people don't know about these brave women who volunteered a year of service in Vietnam to uplift the morale of the troops and bring a touch of home. 2 years ago, she decided it was time for people to know about the Donut Dollies and make sure they are a part of the historical narrative, so she created a documentary. Welcome, Libbie Hegvik.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I wish we were speaking together today, so I hope I don't disappoint because, wow, this is a big crowd, and I am excited and a little nervous. Nerve-sighted is what my kids say. But I am very happy to be here to share with you about some very special women. Oh, I am happy to be here. To talk to you about these very special women, and so happy to have at least one with us today. That's really wonderful. Women who volunteered to go into a war zone, armed with nothing more than compassion, courage, and a powder blue dress. Women who climbed into helicopters, traveled to remote fire bases, sat with wounded and exhausted soldiers, and reminded young men far from home that someone still cared about them. These women were known as the Donut Dollies. For far too long, many people have never heard of them. My connection to the Donut Dollies is deeply personal. Do you want this? Yeah. Want to give it a try? I'll just keep. I feel like I'm kind of like a Donut Dolly programming and things aren't going right. So, okay, no, this is wonderful. All right, so my connection to the Donut Dollies is deeply personal. My courageous mother was a supplemental recreation activities overseas volunteer, SRAO volunteer, with the American Red Cross in Vietnam, nicknamed the Donut Dollies. That's also where she met my father. He was a helicopter pilot. No, other way. That's okay. He was a helicopter pilot with the 101st Airborne Division, stationed at Camp Eagle. The nickname, oh, maybe it is. What if it was that simple? It was a battery, like, it's all right. The nickname, Donut Dollies, actually dates back to World War II and the Korean War, when volunteer women with the Red Cross would go to the front lines and serve donuts and coffee to the men that were fighting. However, by the time, oh, okay, and that's mom and dad. However, by the time the Vietnam War actually came around, they didn't serve any donuts, but the nickname had stuck. These women were carefully selected. They had to be college educated, be between 21 and 24, single, and willing to volunteer for a year of service in Vietnam. Their mission was morale. Oh, we switched already. Or maybe it did. Maybe it is up there, but down here it doesn't look like. It's all right. Their mission was morale, and that may seem simple at first, but it was incredibly important. Most of the soldiers serving in Vietnam were very young, many just out of high school, and they were exhausted, homesick, frightened, lonely, and living under unimaginable circumstances. We're going to the next page. It's okay. I like their faces, so you guys can like them too. The Donut Dollies traveled by helicopter and jeep to bases all across Vietnam, including dangerous forward fire bases, bringing games, activities, conversation, laughter, and a brief sense of normalcy. If you go, I think we're probably 2 or 3 up from where you, where? Of North Sea. They called it programming. If you look down on your sheet, I think that's where they called it programming. And then, yeah. Sometimes they created trivia games or contests. Sometimes they just sat and talked with the men. But what they were really bringing was humanity. For a little while, that's correct. Okay, we're back on track. For a little while, these soldiers could laugh, and for a little while, they could feel connected to home. And the women faced dangers too. They came under rocket attacks and sniper fire. This picture was taken of Donut Dollies in a bunker during a mortar attack. Well, unlike the soldiers around them, they had no weapon, just their courage and compassion, and somehow they still chose to go. I think understanding why my mother chose to volunteer helps explain so much about who she is. My mom lost her own mother when she was only 3 years old. Much of her childhood was spent with just her and her father. Because of that experience, she developed a deep compassion for others very early on in life. She became passionate about helping people and becoming heavily involved with the Red Cross. In fact, in high school, she started her Red Cross club and became its president. Then came college. This was during the Vietnam era. Protests, rallies, demonstrations, and sit-ins were happening everywhere. My mother watched all of it and felt frustrated because she wanted to do something meaningful herself. One day during her sophomore year, she went to her advisor and she said, "That's it. I want to quit school. I just want to go help and do something meaningful." And he happened to also be a volunteer with the Red Cross and knew of her passion for service and helping others. So he told her about the SRA program in Vietnam, and immediately she said, "That's it. That is what I want to do." Well, there was one problem, of course. To volunteer for the program, she had to have a college degree. So she stayed. She worked hard. She finished her degree, getting her degree, and became even more determined. In fact, she was so eager to get to Vietnam and help that after completing all of her classes and exams, she skipped her own graduation ceremony so she could leave immediately for Washington, D.C. to begin her Red Cross training. There, she and the other women received vaccinations, learned military ranks, and were fitted for uniforms and prepared for deployment. Then she boarded a plane and headed to Vietnam. Like many Vietnam veterans, my parents really didn't talk much about their experience after they came home. Honestly, that makes a lot of sense. When many Vietnam veterans returned home, they were not welcomed with gratitude. They were blamed for the war that they didn't start. People yelled at them and they spit on them. They really disrespected them. The anger surrounding the war became directed at the very people who had served. Oh, I am sorry. And because of that, many veterans simply stopped talking about it. So, growing up, I knew my mother had served in Vietnam for a year, and I knew she had been there to uplift the morale, but I didn't truly understand everything she had experienced. That changed when I began making the documentary. One of the greatest gifts of this entire journey was the opportunity to sit down with both of my parents, together and separately, for hours of interviews. For the first time, I really got to hear their stories. And I was amazed. I learned things I had never known. Like my mother's very first night in her first assignment in Vietnam, an ammunition dump exploded because of a careless cigarette. And the Red Cross Center where she was stationed and assigned to work exploded, blew up. And gratefully, she was across camp at the time, but she did see it burn. Or hearing about the creative ways the Donut Dollies tried to lift the morale. My mom has always loved animals and critters, and there were many of them in Vietnam, from what I'm told. At one point, she thought it would be fun to organize a frog race as part of their programming for the troops. So she and the other Donut Dollies found themselves out in the mud trying to catch frogs to take with them to a program. I wish, it's not a photo this time, but I wish I had a photo of this. That mental image still makes me smile. But there were also terrifying moments too. One day, my mother and fellow Donut Dolly, Betsy Tanner, were flown into a fire-based camp rendezvous in the Ashaw Valley, which, as many of you probably know, the Ashaw Valley was one of the most dangerous places in Vietnam. Well, shortly after their helicopter departed, an entire North Vietnamese Army battalion began attacking the base. My mom and Betsy were rushed into what they called the command bunker. In reality, it was a cave. The fighting continued through the night, and they stayed in that cave. They could not be evacuated until the following day. And that, oh, you did switch it, didn't you? Yeah, sorry. Until the following day. And so this picture is actually taken, Betsy was just about to get on the helicopter and she had a camera with her and she turned around and my mom was being helped down by two soldiers through the mud with her little rain jacket. So she snapped this picture. But during that night and during the fighting, at the same time back at Camp Eagle, my father heard reports that 2 Donut Dollies were pinned down in the Ashaw Valley. Of course, there were no cell phones, as you know. No way to check in. They usually just knew they would see each other at dinner time or maybe at the movie in the mess hall that night. My dad didn't know for certain it was my mother, but when she never showed up that night, he said he felt sick to his stomach, and it was a pretty long night. As emotional as it was to hear about my parents' experiences, hearing the stories from the other Donut Dollies was equally important and incredible. And honestly, none of this was originally supposed to become such a big project. I need a drink. The idea for the documentary began because my mother was denied a seat on an honor flight. My father had been selected because he was a military veteran, but my mother was denied because she was not considered a military veteran. That really stayed with me, and it bothered me because it made me realize how many people still didn't understand what these women had done. I remember thinking, how can people honor Vietnam service while completely overlooking these women who also served? That's when I decided to make the documentary. At first, my goal was simply to help educate people. I wanted people to know who the Donut Dollies were. I wanted my mother's story and the stories of the other women to be remembered. Then I learned that the Donut Dollie Convention, it's actually ARCOA, American Red Cross Overseas Association, but the Donut Dollies Convention was happening in Kansas City. Immediately I thought, I have to go. The problem was this was very much a passion project, and our budget was tiny. Thankfully, my in-laws happen to live in Kansas City. My coworker, Madison Munson, had just started working full-time that week. And I was bringing her on board to be the editor for the documentary. I asked her if she would be willing to fly to Kansas City with me stay with my in-laws, and help film the interviews. And because our budget was so limited, instead of bringing a full production crew, the two of us got a crash course in camera, lighting, and sound equipment and decided we would just do it ourselves. Thankfully, Madison was immediately on board. So off we went. We landed in Kansas City, borrowed a car from my in-laws, and headed straight to the convention. Originally, we thought we would interview 4 Donut Dollies: my mom and her 3 friends who were with her at Camp Eagle when she met my dad. The moment she met my dad, actually. One of those friends happened to be the president of the committee. I asked if she would be willing to announce during their meeting that we were filming interviews next door and would love to speak with anyone willing to share their stories. The hotel was incredibly kind. They gave us the conference room next to them for free for 2 days and told us we could leave our equipment locked in that room, which was really great because we didn't want to have to set it up twice. And then something amazing happened. The response from the Donut Dollies was overwhelming. Women kept coming. Story after story after story. By the end, we had interviewed 18 Donut Dollies, and I wish we had had time for more, but we had a plane to catch after the 2 days. Well, one of the women we interviewed was the very first Donut Dollie ever stationed in Vietnam, Carolyn Chandler. One of my favorite stories came from her. It's not in the documentary, actually, but when she arrived in Vietnam, the uniform was only a dress. Well, after climbing in and out of Jeeps and helicopters with the roto wash blowing everything up, she informed the Red Cross that if any of these women wanted to keep their dignity, they would need culottes around these helicopters. And the Red Cross listened. But one of the most meaningful stories to come out of the filming process involved a woman named Marilee. For more than 50 years after returning from Vietnam, Marilee had never attended one of these Donut Dollie Arcoa conventions. She struggled with PTSD and feared that being around the other women and discussing Vietnam would reopen painful memories. But somehow, she decided to attend the convention the year we were filming, and even more amazingly, she chose to sit down and interview with us. I absolutely adore Marilee. We've stayed in touch ever since. When the documentary was released, I worried that it might be triggering for her. So I reached out to check on her. And what she told me has completely changed my understanding of the power of storytelling. She said that talking about her experiences and finally sharing her story had actually been healing, not harmful, healing. She told me that since participating in the documentary, she had started speaking publicly and sharing her experiences and felt emotionally healthier than she had in years. That was one of the moments when I realized that this documentary is becoming something much bigger than I had imagined. Another thing that surprised me was hearing many of the Donut Dollies say, well, we didn't realize we meant so much to the men. They had hoped they were helping, but many didn't fully understand the impact they'd had until veterans began reaching out after the film was released, and veterans would say, you have no idea what it meant just to laugh for an hour, or you reminded us of home. But then many of the veterans also said things equally touching, like, I don't think the Donut Dollies realize how much they meant to us. And the Donut Dollies, of course, say, I don't think that the men realize how much they meant to us either. That mutual care and humanity is really at the heart of this entire story. I originally set out simply hoping people would remember these women. I never could have imagined how healing this process would become for so many people involved. And I certainly never imagined where the documentary itself would go. The film has now received awards from Impact Docs, Accolades Global, Best Shorts Competition, and the Nova International Film Fest. And I just found out we were selected for the LA Independent Film Festival. It also received a Community Partner Award from the Red Cross. The documentary is currently airing on PBS Virginia, VPM, and American Public Television is going to offer it nationwide for release to PBS stations next March, just in time for Women's History Month, Red Cross Awareness Month, and of course, Vietnam Veterans Day, which is March 29th, which I'm sure many of you know. But honestly, one of the most meaningful moments happened very recently. For years, members of the Vietnam Veterans of America group and Donut Dollie Terry Harmon have worked tirelessly to gain official government recognition for the Donut Dollies and their wartime service. Last year, they reached out and asked if they could use the documentary to help educate members of the Senate and Congress. I made this documentary specifically to help educate people, so of course I said yes. And I'm very thrilled to share that on April 29th of this year, the United States Senate unanimously passed a resolution officially honoring and recognizing the Donut Dollies for their wartime service. Sorry. That resolution has now been entered into the congressional record. To me, that moment represents something much larger. It represents people finally beginning to recognize these women who served, and their service was overlooked for far too long. Women who volunteered to walk into war zones, not because they had to, but because they wanted to help. Women who carried compassion into places filled with fear. And women who reminded young soldiers that kindness still existed. And maybe that's why this story matters so much. Because the Donut Dollies remind us that service doesn't always look the way people expect it to. Sometimes service looks like flying into dangerous places just to make someone smile. Sometimes service looks like sitting beside someone who is scared and helping them feel human again. Sometimes service looks like compassion, and compassion is powerful. I often think about my daughters. One morning before the documentary premiered, the same morning it premiered, I came downstairs and found they had dressed up two Barbies in blue dresses with an American flag standing in front of all the Ken dolls as if they were doing a Donut Dollie program. And later, my oldest daughter, when her teacher assigned her to write a paper on heroes, she chose her grandmommy and granddaddy. Her teacher told her, "You don't just have to focus on the Vietnam War." And she told her teacher, "Well, I want to." Offense taken, back off. That's my grandmommy and granddaddy. Anyways. That meant so much to me because at the end of the day, this was always about remembrance, making sure that these women are not forgotten, making sure future generations know who they are and who they were, and making sure kindness, courage, and service continues inspiring others. The Donut Dollies may not have carried weapons, but they carried hope. And sometimes hope is one of the most powerful things you can give another human being. Thank you so much for letting me be here and share these stories. I wanted to share with you just a little clip from the Donut Dollies, 627 women who also served in Vietnam. And then if you would like, I'll do a Q&A, and if you have no questions, I'll get out of your hair. But yeah, let's see if we can get this clip. Everybody, fingers crossed. Sorry.
I was stationed in a small village with 4 other Americans. One day we got a radio call that the helicopter was coming in and we didn't know. Much to our surprise, when the helicopter landed, 2 women in blue dresses got out. We were speechless. These women get off and they start talking, and it's like a lullaby. It's like the softest sound in the world. They would never say there was a happy time in Vietnam. It wasn't even happy when you left, because you were leaving behind people you'd been with for a tour would help keep you alive, and you'd help keep them alive. But they brought a bright spot into a present time.
We provided a touch of home for those guys, 19-year-olds that were away for the first time in their life. But the unique thing, they were away for the first time in their lives in a war zone. And you know, we didn't have any better training than they did.
I'll tell you one thing, you could see our little blue dresses from a very long way away. There was one time we were flying back and the guys way over there could see us and they're waving and we're waving back. Pretty soon 3 guys came over. One guy said, "Can I ask you something?" I said, "Sure." You know, big smiles. He said, "Could I hold your hand?" Like, sure. So we stood there and talked and he held my hand the whole time. That really meant something to the guys, that these girls would drop out of the sky and come in and talk to them and play games. And the games didn't matter. It was a way to bring home to them that somebody cared about them.
So I've passed out, sorry, for those in the back. I've passed out cards, and there's also stacks of cards on the table here and back there. Please, like, share their stories, spread it, watch it, tell others about it. My dad jokes that my mom is passing those out to every single person she meets, like she's ready to win an Oscar or something. But if you'll share their story, I would really appreciate it. Do we have any questions? Yes.
I have 2 questions. When did the first Dollies arrive in Vietnam?
So it was 65, and 1965, and then they stayed till 72. So it was a year before we pulled out, and that's when the Donut Dollies were basically disbanded.
Did any of these brave young ladies lose their life over there?
3 of them did. And in the documentary, you'll see that it mentions that as well. But yes, 3 died.
Was that from enemy fire or disease?
One was from a Jeep accident, one was from illness, and one was stabbed to death by a GI. Yeah, in her quarters. So it was horrible.
I know that they were in World War II. You say Vietnam. Are there any Donut Dollies still in the functions we're having now?
No, the Donut Dollies, that specific program, like the SRAO program, is no longer functioning. However, I did talk to a woman at the convention who is a volunteer with the American Red Cross Overseas Association, and she says, we do have something somewhat similar now, but it's not like, hey, ladies in these blue dresses, just go, and yes, we're just gonna send you into fire bases. But they still, like, they go to war zones, they put like bags together for the men, they may sit and talk with them. So it's not actually the SRA program, but the Red Cross does have something similar, yeah. I want to say also, up here, this little American Red Cross Vietnam Donut Dolly pin, and you can't see it, I'm sorry, but if you see me after, this was actually designed and made by Marilee, the one who had PTSD. So it's just, anyways, this is fun and it means a lot. Oh, question.
I may have missed you saying this before because I'm working and all, but was this a government program? Were they volunteer? Who paid for this?
The Red Cross. It was volunteer. And they did have, they were paid. They did get paid for their year of service, but still, like, they had to fit all this criteria and they had to volunteer to go there. It wasn't just like they were paid gobs of money and were just weren't drafted. No,
And
they chose.
talking about the dresses, everybody needs to remember, and I'm sure most of us do, in the 60s, we did not wear pants. We wore skirts and dresses.
Right.
I mean, if you were maybe out in the yard doing yard work, you might put on some jeans or something like that, some pants. But, you know, Joe knows and everybody else that went to school with me, we did not wear dresses in the 60s, so.
Yeah, so they always wore their dresses even out in the field where there might be punji sticks and all kinds of things. Yes, sir.
Yes, how did your mother and father meet?
How are my mother and father doing? Meet? Oh, you'll have to watch. No, I'll tell you. So my dad had just recently, he was at Camp Eagle, which was a very big camp. Some of you might know, I don't know. But it was a very large camp, and he had just been assigned, he had moved up into a new area, and he went into the mess hall that was in that area. And it was like one of his first days up there. It happened to be the same day that my mother landed in Camp Eagle, was dropped off. She was part of the group of Donut Dollies that were the first stationed at Camp Eagle. They had maybe programmed there a little, but she was the first stationed at Camp Eagle. And she got dropped off. Two or three of the women had arrived like a few days before. They met up. She didn't even go to her hooch yet. And she went to the mess hall. And my dad walked in like right after that, and he's bold. And he walked over like, there are these cute American girls. And so he sat down across from Mom and started talking to them. And they just got to talking, and time went by, and Mom, they were talking about things, and you can see this in the documentary too, but they were talking about things that they couldn't get in Vietnam, and Mom said, oh, well, aerosol deodorant, or not aerosol, excuse me, Arid Extra Dry. Arid Extra Dry deodorant, you can't get it this far north because Camp Eagle was pretty far north in South Vietnam. And she said, I just can't get it. And Dad had just done a supply run south, and he picked up 2 cans. And so he was like, well, I have an extra can of Arid Extra Dry, and I will give it to you. So he was like, she was like, well, that would be lovely. It's fine. You don't need it. No, I'll give it to you. So he goes in his hooch. He comes back out. On behalf of General Zace and the 101st Airborne Division, I would like to present you with this can of Arid Extra Dry deodorant. And she is very, like, my mom is like, oh, very embarrassed. Like, oh dear. Yes, thank you for the deodorant, though. I will appreciate that. But that's how they met day one, and then just started falling in love, and yeah, taking walks around camp, meeting up at dinner when they could, breakfast time. Yes.
Did your father stay in the service and make a career?
He did. He was career military. For my dad, he said that afterwards, it was, like I was born in Germany, and I have siblings that were born in Hawaii, Texas, Kentucky. He said for him and for my mom, it was actually probably a little easier for them in terms of the feeling from the general population and how they treated those returning, because since he went ahead and became career military, you know, he was stationed overseas, and all the men he was really working with and serving with, they had experienced Vietnam too. They just didn't talk about it but they didn't need to, and they were, anyways, it kind of helped to move forward. But yes, he stayed in the service. Yes, ma'am.
So other than viewing it on YouTube, is there any other way you can watch your documentary?
Yes, so you can either go on YouTube, and it's free. It's not a subscription thing. But also if you most TVs, you can just download the PBS app, which will be your VPM, Virginia Public Media app. And if you type in Donut Dollies, you can watch it on demand through there. They air it from time to time too, but if you want to go and type it in, it'll come up. And it's 46 minutes long on VPM, 49 on YouTube. We tightened up a little of the credits and stuff for
So
VPN.
any chance, no matter how remote, that may come out on a DVD, which I know does that anymore?
No, so I know, like hard copies, we're just not set up. Yeah, we're just not set up to be able to like run that and yeah. At one point, Arcoa, the Donut Dollies, the group of Donut Dollies they said a lot of the women want like a DVD or a thumb drive. Are you able to provide? So just specifically for them, for this last summer's convention, or this last year's convention, they, when they reached out, we worked together with them and paid a company, and then they had all these. Okay, it's not so much a part 2, but before the documentary was released, I sent it to all of the veterans and the Donut Dollies that were in it, because I wanted to make sure I didn't spell anyone's name wrong or get their years of service wrong or anything like that. I just didn't want to offend. And I said, please watch this, do not share this link. One of the veterans, his name is Joe Griffiths, and some of you might have heard of him. He's a Vietnam veteran who runs a radio show out of Ocean City, New Jersey, and it's called Welcome Home Veterans, and he's a vet, and he had a friend who's a producer, and he sent it to his friend. And then his friend called me and said, hey, this is really great. I'd love to make this into a movie, like your parents' love story, but by way of like following your mom and kind of Donut Dolly service. And I said, I would love that as well. And funny enough, like a week or so before, I had seen 688. Have any of you seen 688? So good. So his friend was the producer on that film, and he said, I'd really like to bring and when I saw it like a week or two before, I was like, this is amazing. I would love whoever made this to like make a movie for the Donut Dollies, like make the documentary into a movie. So like a week and a half later, when he's on this phone, he's like, well, my friend is a producer on this movie. I don't know if you've heard of it, but I'd love to bring her on board. And I'm like, universe has listened. Like it really was. I was like, yes, that would be amazing. So we've been working together and working on making a film. It is a slow-going process. I did spend even more time interviewing my parents, and this has nothing to do with the documentary. It'll have something to do with the film if it gets made, but we found 88 reel-to-reel recordings that my mom and my dad had made in Vietnam, like when my mom was stationed elsewhere, because they were together for months and then she was transferred. But they would send each other reel-to-reel recordings or send reel-to-reels home to their parents. And I got this box of them in mom and dad's storage, and dad's like, well, I've been meaning to burn those for years. I'm like, what is wrong with you? And so I bought like a piece of equipment for my audio engineer. He happened to have an old industrial reel-to-reel player, but it needed parts, so I found those. And we like digitized all of them, and I went through, and it's amazing because like I'm getting to hear my parents in their 20-something-year-old voices explain, like, Dad, you know, with he's from Florida, so his southern accent, like, I think your daughter fell in love with me over a can of deodorant, and and it's the most beautiful thing. I wish more people had the opportunity to like interview their parents and talk to their parents more about their life and their service, but that's really exciting. So we have all this great content. Also their letters. Like, Dad was such a romantic. It is so sweet about like how much he misses her, and one day we'll be back in the real world on a Saturday night and we won't be apart. And I'm like, oh, I have to stop reading the letter. But it's really beautiful. And so hopefully we can get a movie made before it's too many years. Yes?
There's a man at the War Memorial, he came here one time, and he actually collects letters that people wrote during wartime, back and forth to each other during wartime. And we have a lot of Vietnam veterans here, and a few Korean War veterans here. And I'm wondering how many Vietnam veterans who are in this room right now have experienced the Donut Dollies, and if they have memories of them. Can, you know, yeah, you know.
Yeah.
I was just wondering
Yeah.
what they remember and how it made them feel, you know.
We're documenting as a Vietnam veteran of 69 and 70 in Cu Chi, Vietnam, and 25th Infantry. To see them for the first time, you can't explain it. It's like boom, because everything was OD green and dirty and nasty. And then here's these young ladies in this blue. You go, wow. Even our nurses weren't dressed like that. So, and I was fortunate enough to be in contact with 9 of them at the division where I was. And I just can't tell you, sitting down, playing cards, playing games, doing everything, rocket attacks going on, and these girls would come out and you'd see them and talk, and everything would just change. All that would go away. What happened yesterday would go away. And I was asked, we were going to bring a young person here, but she couldn't come, but it was asked about,
Hold that a little closer to you.
was asked about, were the donuts good? Did they make good donuts? But they didn't make donuts in Vietnam because it was too hot and humid. Correct?
Correct.
So, kind of had to let them down on that. But yes, I just can't believe it, and I hope anyone in here can see this and you'll understand. But as a veteran, being there, it put me there. And we have a Donut Dolly right here, and it was just amazing. And thank you, Libbie, for doing this.
Thank you. What's funny is you'll find trolls everywhere, and there's 1 or 2 comments there's many comments on the YouTube page. Wonderful comments, beautiful comments about the documentary. But there's one, I remember reading it and I thought, okay, you clearly didn't watch the film, because he's like, I remember them, the donuts were gross and they charged us for them. And I'm like, well, troll, have a good day. Thank you for that question. That was great. Thank you.
Libbie?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know how many Donut Dollies are still living?
So as of Memorial Day, I made a quick little film to put on the YouTube channel, saying let's not forget them and their service, and I had checked into it. 121 have passed, and there were 627. So there's a pretty good numbers still alive, and that's great. But yeah, 121 as of Memorial Day in May.
Do you have any plans to try to go back to one of these gatherings and get films from some of the ones you missed?
So I would love to. Time is an enemy, isn't it? And I haven't found time yet. They have, I'm so bummed. There's another convention, they do one every year, but the convention this year, a number of them have reached out and said, you have to come this year. Like, you can just sit around and share stories like we've done before, and you can film it. And I said, I would love to do that, but it's literally happening when my family and I are going on a vacation. And I won't be at that one, but maybe we can go to another one, hopefully. But also it's hard because like it involves me telling my company, like, please fund another one of these things that you wouldn't fund us hotels and stuff before. And I kind of just went and stayed with in-laws. So we'll see, hopefully, maybe. I know there's some really wonderful stories still out there. No, I do know that. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Libbie, amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wasn't that wonderful?